you at the same time. I was like, wait, hang on. So I think
no, it's all right. It's all right. Yeah, because like I have not really because before I haven't really used Instagram Live because a lot of the people that usually hey guys, people are joining us already.
Yeah, cool.
It's just like a lot of the people that tend to watch my live streams like also tend to watch like after the fact. So
and it's easier to save.
While, Instagram Live would only like leave it around, like leave your stuff up for 24 hours. Your Instagram Live's up for 24 hours.
Right.
So I was always doing them on Facebook, but since Instagram is now allowing you to like download them afterward and keep them and then upload them to IGTV, I was like, hey, let's try a couple of these taverns here on Instagram Live and see how they go. Why not?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did. And I was the same way. Like I hadn't been using Facebook Live at all, but I'm watching people do it, and they're like, you need to do this. And when I started doing lives on Instagram, I actually found it nice because when I started, they immediately were like, oh yeah, you can save it to IGTV, and that's a big plus.
Yeah,
it's easy.
Yeah. So now I'm gonna be doing a little bit of both because I have my audience on Facebook.
Yeah.
I have actually even some of the same people here on Instagram, but some people that use Instagram more than Facebook. So
I'm in the same boat.
I might just kind of mix it up a little bit, and it'll always be uploaded to all my stuff and everything. But yeah, welcome everybody that's joining us already. Cool. That's awesome to see. And and April. Yeah, I mean, I guess we can get started.
It's up to you. I mean, we could.
I'll delete out.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm cool.
I'll delete out that mess in the beginning.
Hey, I think everyone has tech.
Trying to like work it.
Well, I'm back there going like, I'm a customer. I don't know tech. Wait, I'm answering. I don't know. So thanks everybody. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
I was like shouting at the phone as if you could hear me at that point, even though I hadn't connected. It was typical tech problems. I'm hitting buttons and then.
Hey Jenny. Hey everybody. Hey Hughes Taylor. Hi everybody. Thanks for joining us now. So cool. Well, great. Yeah, awesome. So it's so great to talk to you because
we
usually see each other at these living history events, and those just didn't happen last year. I know, right?
I'm missing all of you so much. Like I hadn't realized. I think like a lot of us, absence makes the heart grow fonder, definitely. But I hadn't realized how. I mean, I suddenly realized it's like I've been on the road 20 some years. Oh, I'm old. Oh my gosh. And I've been seeing the same people year after year at certain events, and you're all like family. I mean that. It's just like, it's been so, I know everyone's having a hard time too, but like, especially for me, shows I've been going to for so long, and I'm like, I am missing people so much. Yeah, so I'm glad all of us get to connect this way. It is really fun. So thank you for asking me to be on, because it's just great. It's great to chat with you. It's so enlightening. It's like, wait.
Yeah, and you're my first guest on my live stream, because usually it's just me. It's usually just me kind of rambling and like, talking to the people that are commenting and everything.
I love your live streams. I think we've all enjoyed them. I mean, we really enjoy watching each other talk about either complex stuff or new stuff. And it's like amazing to me when I do them too. Like people just want to hear even the little things, like, it's great to be like, oh, I've got a new song. But even if you're just like, hey, I'm here on a Friday night, I love watching your stuff. So I feel like we all feel the same about each other. It's fun.
Oh, thanks very much. Oh, look, 96 Fabrics just joined.
Hi,
Yay! Yay, awesome. Hey, guys. We missed everybody at Fort Frederick and everybody everywhere else. So.
I'm going this year, even if I have to wear a bubble suit. I'll be like, it's period correct.
Yeah.
It's authentic. It's authentic. It's fine. This plexiglass really was here. Yeah.
Exactly. There you go. Right. Yeah. They had their form of plastic back then, so hey,
Right.
So, hey, by the way, look what I'm wearing.
I know, thank you. I love it. Yay!
I'm wearing your face.
I was actually, it's funny, mine's in the wash right now. I was thinking of wearing it earlier, and I was like, oh my goodness, we probably would have twinned, but thank you.
I know, we could have totally twinned here, so.
I live in this great big tumble down old house, and I'm in my basement studio right now, but it's so cold everywhere, so I'm like in these I'm in frumpy big sweaters all the time. It's all right, I think we all, so good.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm Huzzah, cheers,
Huzzah! Cheers! Like our best tavern wear out. Clink,
bye.
clink.
Everybody else, raise your glasses here. So cool. Yeah. So what are you drinking?
For me, it looks probably a bit like I shouldn't say what it looks like. It's really yellow. It's Gatorade.
Oh,
So
hey,
yeah.
you know, what? Yeah, hey, I have a kombucha in here.
Ooh, that sounds exciting.
Kombucha. Yeah. I love kombucha. See, I have some pretty specific fitness goals right now, so I'm not doing too much alcohol at the
Me
moment.
too. Hmm.
But but kombucha is awesome. It's a fermented tea. It's an ancient drink. It's good for
Oh yeah.
probiotics, and probiotics is like everything.
Especially
So,
right now, you guys
so it's just
take
like,
care of your
yeah.
health.
So having kombucha in the tavern here. So,
Well, now I don't feel so bad because I was
yeah.
gonna joke. I was like, well, I love a nice period drink, but right now I'm like on a health kick, and I'm like, I was upstairs like
Right,
I haven't
yeah.
drank enough water today. Let me just get some Gatorade. And I'm thinking it probably looks a little funny, but I got my best tavernware out. I even put it in a really beautiful, ooh,
Woo, there you go.
pewter
I
and
love it.
glass. Yeah, but
I'm loving it. Yeah, and also, oh, I think everybody needs these in their life. I love a good homemade jelly,
Ooh.
but if you're not doing alcohol because of fitness reasons or health reasons, whatever, you could still have a little bit of this. And I'm actually going to be having these people actually on the live stream too in another couple of weeks. I met them when I was in Gettysburg this past, well, now it's last
Right.
September because it was September 2020. But I was like, wait a minute, that just happened. But yeah, it's called it's like this cute little very kitschy Civil War company, Civil War inspired. They also do some later Victorian post Civil War too.
Uh-huh.
But it's called Fanny's Fancies, and they do they call boozy jams and jellies.
Oh.
And this is their sweet. I just got these in the mail. They just sent me some more because I bought some.
Oh,
I don't know
wow.
how well.
No, I can see it. Yeah. And I love Gettysburg. I live really close. So we're in Gettysburg all the time.
I love Gettysburg.
Oh, I do too.
But this is their sweet red wine jelly, and
Ooh.
they've become a huge part of my meal prep. This is awesome on chicken. I even use it on fish.
Yeah.
Things like that. And then I just got their Dan Sickles Peach Orchard Farm jelly, which I think will be awesome like in the morning.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Peaches are great.
Yeah,
I love peaches,
so
especially in winter.
I'm so excited to try this. And I'm going to be having them on the live stream in a couple of weeks. I think it's the first weekend in February.
Oh, cool.
So I'm really excited. They're going to be coming to us from Gettysburg, which I'm really, really excited about.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, but people, you guys need these in your life. So
yeah, you all need to go to Gettysburg if you can.
Wear your stage shirt.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like it's so important. Everybody really wants to support each other right now. And we were even saying, my husband and I live about, literally, it's like Gettysburg is like as the crow flies, as they say, literally down Route 15 from us. And then I joke, because Beth of 96, she's like, I just hopped on 15 and like drove to her. It only took me 8 hours, but we're all 15. So the joke is like we go to Gettysburg, or at least did all the time. And the last few months when we've gone in there, I'm happy to see that it isn't quite as empty as I was worried it would be. But like there's so many beautiful businesses there that are worth just supporting in general. And it's such a gorgeous town. And I feel so lucky to live close to it, because we'd just be like, oh, you want to go out to dinner? Sure. Go down to Gettysburg. And people just think of it as a Civil War sort of stop, but it's so much more than that. It's the county seat. It's got, just thriving businesses. So yeah, there's so many places there. Like we'll just go in shops and buy a little this and that just to try to keep them going, because we're all in the same boat. We're all just like, how are you doing? Are you good? Do you need oh, I need this. Let me get this for a gift. And you just kind of, do what you can. Spread the love and the whatever money you got. So,
Yeah, you'll have to excuse my heater. It sometimes tends to kick on
That's okay.
every so often. So, but I usually go down to Gettysburg every year, and just as like a pleasure cruise. And I usually go. Sometimes I'll go with someone. Sometimes I'll just go just because sometimes like I actually kind of like going on trips by myself sometimes.
Yeah,
You know,
why
I
not?
mean, I love going with friends and anybody else. Don't get me wrong, but hey guys, just joining us. But like I sometimes like to go by myself. I don't know if that makes me weird,
No, I do that all the
but
time.
sometimes it's
I do that all the time. We're
but
independent.
sometimes it's just like,
Yeah,
you know what? Like, because when you travel with other people, yes, it's fun, but you're also kind of on each other's
oh, of
schedule.
course.
Whereas if you go on vacation by yourself, it's just kind of like, okay, I can just do what I want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't have to worry about, oh, hey, what do you want to do? Or like, what do you want to do? Or,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I just took a day trip in September just because with COVID, there really wasn't much time to plan because of obviously, you didn't really know. Sometimes it's like even like a week or sometimes even a day before something, like
Yeah.
you wouldn't know what was going on,
Yeah.
which I'm sure we all saw with all the living history and reenactment events. I mean,
Yeah.
first it looked like, okay, they might happen. And then like the week, 2 weeks before, okay, never mind.
It's so frustrating. It's like living on tenterhooks all the time because, you look forward, but then you go, oh, I don't know. I mean, anything could change, like literally on a dime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still so it was kind of like, a mini like express vacation where I was trying to get like a little bit of everything in and that's when I ran into these people and, and if, hopefully, maybe this year I'll be able to, stay for a little bit longer and everything. But it's just, but like I do that is a pilgrimage I try to make every year. And I enjoy it every time. Even if I do the same, even if like I end up doing the same stuff I did the year before, it's just kind of like,
it's fun.
It's still like, hey, but what is your favorite place to visit?
In Gettysburg itself.
Gettysburg or anywhere, or what's your favorite living history event?
Oh, well, definitely.
I know that's hard. Yeah,
that's a hard question. But if I had my favorite living history event in general, just like between seeing people, camping, Fort Frederick, it would be Fort Frederick because it's such a staple. I think this would have been last year would have been our 15th year attending. Okay. And then I think that my next favorite site to go to any sort of living history event would be Mount Vernon because I have such great memories of all the events we've done at Mount Vernon, especially in 1999. I'm dating myself because in 99 it was the 200th anniversary of George Washington's death, and now this was before 9/11. Obviously, it was before the 20 years that we've been living through that have been much more security lockdown. Let's be honest. So we I was with the 43rd. 2nd Pennsylvania Regiment at that time, as well as Sutlering. But anyway, I was with all of them, and I remember we actually got at like 2 a.m. we were all still sitting up, sort of toasting Washington, and didn't want to go to sleep. It's like we're in Mount Vernon, I'm not going to go to sleep. What do we do? Walked up to the house. At that point, they didn't have more than just a couple guards sort of looking around, and they were very polite. They let us walk up and stand on the porch. We actually sat on the rocking chairs and sort of rocked away, and I really love that site. It's so beautiful, and it was such a, it's just can't describe it. It was like awesome. So I still love going to events there. So that's probably my favorite site, but Fort Frederick is my favorite event. And I feel like Fort Fred for a lot of us is like a big family reunion if you go, all the time. So, but my favorite city would be Gettysburg. Like my favorite place in Pennsylvania that I like to go to, if I had to choose a city, I would say it's definitely hands down Gettysburg. And yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I met you at Fort Frederick.
Yeah.
That's where I met you, and I remember because I think it was like 3-4 years. It was like
at least 3 or 4. Yeah.
Yeah, like 3 or 4 years ago, and it was my first time attending Fort Frederick, and I remember I was so set to go shopping and get like a bunch of just really cool little things to add to my kits and all that fun stuff. But I remember for like my friend Sarah and I, who I was also camping, who was in the group that I was camping with, we started doing our shopping, and I think your tent was the first one that we came to, and I just fell in love with all of your things. Hey, Kirk, you just joined us. So, and I just fell in love with all of your, just what you had. I mean, it's so beautiful and just so like intricately done. And it's, period, it's, wonderfully just period correct, but it's also accessible, I think, to like somebody who might not necessarily be into living history. Like you have some things that I could like see, okay, yeah, like maybe somebody who's maybe outside the living history world might be able to appreciate that. And I think that's what really struck me about your stuff too. Hey, Amanda, that's what struck me about your stuff too. So,
thank you.
yeah, no problem. And you know what? And in the years after that, it kind of became a tradition for me to visit your tent first. And yeah, and it will be once Fort Frederick gets started up again.
It will.
Yes, it'll continue to be my tradition. And I'd love to like even like get like a video and stuff of your setup and everything.
Oh, I would love that if you did that.
Yeah, but you've been doing this for quite some time. So I know I interviewed you a little while back, but for those that like maybe aren't quite, maybe didn't read that interview or whatever, or like they're just finding like, you or maybe me now and everything. Like, where did you, where did you get your first influences for costuming and making clothing? Because you've done quite a bit. Like, you've done television, theater, like your work can be seen, like, not just at living history events. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, it's actually like, it's funny with like most of us. I mean, I feel like my career is I'm very blessed to do it. I feel very happy. Like, I know that you don't just, when you create a business like this, you don't know at the beginning, like all the things, I'm putting it bad. Like, yeah, you just don't know when you start. You're like, can I live off this? Is everyone going to support me? And am I ever going to get anywhere? And when actually people start talking to you or interviewing you, you do become really humbled because you're like, oh my gosh, well, I did this. And I was like, my stuff was there. And then you start to actually sort of go, oh, wow, I actually haven't, it's like amazing. But I've been very lucky. I started young, sort of in a nutshell. So I grew up closer to Philadelphia in like the sort of Westchester area suburbs. And it's like literally, I grew up in a little place called like Chadds Ford, and it's right up against Media. And if you know that area, like Chadds Ford is like the mecca of American foodways and living history in that like in the state. And I was like trained. I was basically involved in living history from like age 6 or 7. I started hearth cooking that young, and then I started volunteering at a site right down the street from where I grew up. And my mother was a big history nut, and just really. She wasn't a hippie, but she was like a hippie wannabe. She was like all organic before everybody knew what that was. And she was like, she took like Shaklee products and like vitamins. And she was like, wanted everything healthy. And she had me very late in life. And so she was like determined to do it right. So anyway, she was a really good mom. She's still with me, thankfully. And she was always really encouraging. She's like, yeah, you want to volunteer at this site? You want to like keep working? So pretty much by the time I was 18, I was teaching other people how to hearth cook and sew period clothing because I grew up in it. And I didn't think much of it because it was like the world I grew up in. And then to make a long story short, I was like, well, I can't make a living at this, can I? So I'll I'll take a gap year and go work in insurance. I work for AIG. And it actually went really well. I enjoyed it. I liked it. I passed like entry level stuff. I was sort of like, oh, I found my career. And then I just was like, no, I need to go back to school and I want to go back for what I love. So I went back for fashion design and costume history, and actually got like retail management stuff in there too. But anyway, it helps, but I didn't really like it. And then I came out and basically, let's see, what year was that? I started sutlering in 1997, and then I graduated college in the early 2000s, and then I just sort of jumped in. I got married at 21 to a very supportive man who I met reenacting, interestingly enough, even though neither one of us, he was like 25 and finishing college. I was just getting into college, and he was like, oh, hey, you can like cook over a hearth? Cool. We started hanging out, and eventually he's like, you cook, you want to marry me? Sure, whatever. So we got married, and then he was just very supportive. I have to give Barry a lot of credit, because if he hadn't said, yeah, you can try to make a business out of like a living history, like cooking slash sort of living history, clothing, whatever, you know, it's the two halves of my business. If he hadn't said that, if he hadn't been as supportive from the get-go, I wouldn't still be doing it now. So it's only in the position it is because of him. So along the way, just a lot of different opportunities. Like I've worked with Mount Vernon when they did the big visitor center, and I did the gown for Caroline Goodall, who plays Martha in the big IMAX. And I still pinch myself like when I did that dress, because they were like, here's the fabric, here's the measurements. We're not going to tell you who it is. It's just somebody high profile. And I'm at home like crying, like sewing this dress. And I sent it off, and they're like, oh, it fits. We didn't have to do a single adjustment. And I'm like, what? You have to do a single adjustment?
Yeah.
Like what? Okay, I guess. And that was like in 2005. So since then, it's like, you know, you just get random calls. Like it's like everyone tells you, right? You're sitting at home. And I don't know how you react when someone calls you and says like, I'm hiring you for this great thing, this big venue. You're gonna be right. You're kind of like, oh, thank you, la la la, and you hang up and you're like, you know, you're like doing the happy dance, you're doing the gold dance, because you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, doing a happy dance when you get off the phone.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally just like, you're like a kid. You're like, oh my God. And then you suddenly, it dawns on you, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm like a professional. This huge imposter syndrome sort of takes over, and you think, what am I doing? But
of course, yeah, we all have
that. I'm finding more and more now with social media, we're able to connect like this, and I realize that I think it scares me when people don't admit that. When they say like, when they, I mean, I'm not trying to bash you, but when they sit there and just like, oh yeah, it's great, I'm just like, you know, they've got imposter syndrome like me, because I'm sure, you know,
right. Oh, yeah.
no one ever feels
like,
totally confident.
Oh yeah, well even like with music and everything. I mean, you know, as a music artist, you know, there's times when, you know, because I'm working on a new album and I'm about to release an EP as well. And, you know, a couple singles through the year before my album comes out and everything. And, you know, there's times when you're like, yes, this stuff's awesome. I'm so proud of it. And then like the next day you're like, oh my God, this is awful. Nobody should listen to me, you know?
And you're like, what am I doing? I'm doing the wrong thing. It's hard.
Exactly, yeah.
But I think if you don't have that ability to self-examine, first off, you won't grow. Second of all, you won't thrive. And you definitely will end up not being probably a very nice person too. And I think it's important to be approachable, even if you're successful. So, you know, some people are better at maybe like understanding their success, or like, yeah, I don't know. But it is always really enjoyable to look back at what you've achieved, but then also remember, like, you still have a lot of growing to do. And so, you know, just to like throw out there, you were saying, well, like, you know, my stuff's been all over the place. And it's funny when people ask you, like, so where's your work been, or where is it, and what people always want to know, like, ooh, where can I see you work? Like, they kind of want to know that you're like successful before they'll like kind of give you, you know. So my husband was like, you know what, you should get some movie posters, or like posters of different TV or films or whatever, and put them in your studio just to remind yourself. And I was like, oh, that's like so arrogantly showing off or whatever. Like, I won't do that. And then I sat down and thought about it, and I was like, actually, that'd be kind of inspiring if you came down all the time and looked at what, like, so you should do it with your album covers, because like when you like publish something, so it's sort of like you see movie stars and they're like, oh, like, look, there's Die Hard, and then there's this, and it's like that. But you walk down and you genuinely kind of look at it every day and you go, oh my gosh, I'm really humbled. So I've got one from Vampire Diaries, because I did a bunch of stuff for them. I've never even watched it yet. I'm so behind. I haven't even seen Vampire Diaries. I want to. And I've got stuff in, like, there was some stuff in the early Poldark, and bits and pieces in Turn, and bits and pieces, like, you know, in Sleepy Hollow and Fox. But like, if I add it all up, it sounds really like really impressive. Most of the time, it's just sort of like, hey, do you have these pieces? Can you overnight them? Here's our number. Just throw them in a box, and we trust you know what you're doing. And it's actually pretty nice. But then later you get to look at it, you're like, oh wow, I did that. That's so cool. I'm just sewing in a nice basement studio. Sometimes I have to kind of pinch myself. But yeah, and like you said, I don't focus. My main goal is living history, people and sites. But I don't. You know, I'll work with film, TV, movies, obviously film, TV, brides. You know, so that's really what I'm doing now. But I'm trying to make it like authentic clothing accessible for whoever wants it, with, you know, with
of course,
a fun flair. So, and I love your new music, by the way, because I was just listening last night, and I don't know if you know this, because I don't know if I've ever told you, but like, I am super uber into like medieval to sort of Tudor, anything of that era, hurdy-gurdies, flutes, and I'm just like, I'm such a Tudor like nerd at heart. So
Cool.
yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, my new album is based on
I
Tudor
know. I
England.
was like,
Yeah.
so it's awesome. I listened to your little snippet you're like releasing. I was like, oh, I'm so excited. So it sounds great. It sounds great.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. So, so I expect the album be out. I plan, to have it out like at the end of this year and everything. But I'll be doing little releases throughout the year. But yeah, but
Cool.
it's like you know, but like I said, it really, you do kind of go through an imposter syndrome, like where one minute you're super confident about what you're doing and you're like, yes, this is awesome. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
excited to share this with people. And then the next minute you're like, nobody should listen to this, But yeah,
Do you have those moments
yeah,
like when you're recording and you like when you watch people in pre-recorded studio sessions and you just sort of turn around, you're just like, nope, that's it, cut it all. We got to do it all over again. Do you ever do that?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, I did that with one of the vocals on my Parting Glass EP that's coming out in another week, or so. But there was, I had this one, and I've kind of been kind of chronicling all of this for people like on my email list and doing just like episodes, making the album episodes. And I kind of talked a little bit about this, but there was one night I was doing vocals for one of the songs, and no matter, I kept playing it back, and I was gonna go to the gym when I was done, and when I was done with the vocals. So, and I kept playing it back, and I was just not liking it. I'm like, I don't like what my voice is like. What's wrong with it? I don't know. But it was getting late, so I was just kind of like, I got to go to the gym. I can't. So I kind of walked away from it for a while, and sometimes that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
And then when I came back to it, I was just like, I still wanted to do the vocals over again, but then when I did them over again, it was kind of like, okay, that was the take,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, because that's one thing I've been doing throughout this whole, throughout like last year and everything too, was like getting my own like home recording studio set up. Not that I'll never use like, other people's recording studios, but, it's good to be self-reliant like that because, everything shut down. So, just like, well, if I want to get stuff done, I gotta, I guess, learn how to, really do it myself.
Yeah.
And it's a learning curve, but once you have it down, it's not like that complicated. But like mixing and mastering and all that stuff, I'll leave that to the professionals and everything. But like just like even, but I know enough to like, make a good recording and then send it to be like, send it to the people that know what they're doing to be mixed and mastered,
I do. I feel like right now we're all being tested in the tech zone because it's whether it's like, people at home recording music or people at home doing like, YouTube videos, pre-recording. It's a lot of people say the same thing. They say, I know how to use the equipment. I can film. I can set up a decent layout. I can create a home studio. But maybe mixing and editing and all that, it isn't your thing. So at least you feel like you can be productive and do your skill and do your art, but then sort of hand it off to people and just be like, I have no idea how you're going to do that. Here, just take this and make something nice out of it. So they can, which is great. So, yeah.
Yeah. And one of my engineer friends says he's going to show me how to do mixing and mastering. And that's great. Like, I'd love to know how to do it. But even when I know how to do it, I think I'm still going to send it to people that know what they're doing there. Because, and like I said, I'd like to know how to do it, just in case, But I think, I'll still be sending it to people that, like I said, know what they're doing in that area.
No, I hear you.
So.
I think it's great that you can record at home, though. Because, it's really, like, we're down to that point where it's kind of like, okay, well, eventually things will open up, but now maybe you're just like, well, maybe I don't need to go somewhere else. Maybe I can really do this from home. Like, it's sort of challenging us to think out of the box of like, well, not that I don't want to support another business or maybe a venue, but like, do I really need to be going somewhere else to do this? Can I just invest in myself?
Exactly. And you know what? And I can still support them by sending it to be mixed and mastered,
Exactly.
So, and I could still, and they could, and that's what's nice about technology too, is that, you know, you can actually have a producer produce your album like kind of back and forth, like online and everything. So there's still ways that you could support like those local studios and everything,
Mm-hmm.
while still, you know, being able to do things yourself, because, you know, and not having to worry about, you know, having to book studio time and having to work around everybody else's schedule. And, you know, so like you can just like record it at home and everything, or, you know, having to worry about like, you know, oh gosh, how many hours have I been in the studio? How much money am I, is this going to
Yeah,
be? You
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
so there's even little things like that. But yeah, but yeah, but you've been involved in kind of like 18th century and period food and all that. Like speaking of 18th
Yeah.
century and period food, and those that just joined us, this is a very awesome jelly company from Gettysburg, and these people are going to be on. They're going to be on the live stream in a couple of weeks, which I'm really excited about. But yeah, but you've also been involved in like not just clothing, but food as well. So like, yeah, just talk. Can you talk
Sure.
about how did you get involved there?
So when I really started in living history, it was really the hearth cooking and the foodways that I
Yeah,
essentially got sort of the bug for first. And
yeah,
so I grew up kind of hearth side. And then, I mean, the clothing, naturally, I became like, I loved all things Gone with the
of course.
Wind and everything. So I just, and I worked at a site, so I was making my own clothing and eventually started making clothing for people. But along the way, I mean, essentially, the food was always the first thing that I cared about. So, um, when I moved out to this area like 15 years ago, I knew that the historic Dill's Tavern, for example, was like right in Dillsburg, and I'd passed it my whole life because I had family out here. So that's why I kind of came from Westchester and decided to buy a crazy old tumble down farm here and in
Yeah,
Pennsylvania, and I love it. And then within a couple years, I knew lots of people from Dill's Tavern from reenacting. They were like, yeah, you know how to hearth cook, and like you got like what, like 30 some years experience. Like, yeah, I kind of grew up doing it, and I could cook for crowds. And
yeah,
so I really kind of I would say that part of like that side of my job, calling, whatever you want to call it, career sort of blossomed when I sort of fell in with all of them. But before that, essentially, I was doing it for lots of different sites as like a consultant, so giving, hearth cooking lessons. And I mean,
yeah,
I guess you would say I specialize in Pennsylvania, 18th century Pennsylvania cooking, and the food heritage of that region. Although I'm like,
yeah.
obsessed with all things England. I'm a total Anglophile, so I have lots of English cooking books that, I mean, they would have had access to
Yeah.
English cooking books too. So, but yeah,
Hmm.
I've been hearth cooking for essentially 30 years. So, I do that as a consultant, and I do food programs for Dill's Tavern. I develop things for them, do workshops. I'm actually, yeah, I'm working on a couple cookbooks right now. So I'm so excited.
Ooh,
I don't know. I thought one of them,
keep us
yeah, so I
posted.
will. So one of them's mine, and the other one's being kind of written with or for another organization. I'm not really able to talk about it yet, but yeah, like sort of that's like my other love. Yes, my two loves of the hearth cooking and that. But I mean, like if I had to choose an absolute date, I love like late 17th, early 18th century cooking and all the books associated with that like era, and like the diaries of Samuel Pepys, and just like him constantly talking about in England like all the food he ate. So I'm really obsessed with trying to recreate that sort of thing. So I'd like to do more of that in future. I'm trying to create like a sort of, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe a blog or something, but do a lot more cooking. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be
I don't know if
awesome.
you
So do you think?
I don't know if you saw, because like I feel always so humble talking about it. So Walter Stabe from Taste of History came out to the Dill's Tavern. We did an episode in
Yeah,
middle of 2019, and that just aired. That was like, oh, this is amazing, and it happened. And then we got it filmed,
yeah,
and then COVID hit, and then we were all like kind of waiting for it to debut. And
right.
so yeah, it came out on PBS, and now it's on Amazon. So that was like a huge feather in the cap sort of moment for the site, for me, because I got
Yeah.
to work with Walter. I knew him before, but not well. And when we contacted him to say, would you like to come here? Would you like to do an episode? He was like, oh, absolutely. And he was like, April, what do you want to do? And I was like, okay, I'm going to look at the ledgers and see what was actually done at this site, because it was a tavern, and we've got a lot of documentation. So it was a really wonderful experience. So, um, that was like amazing, and I wish we could do it again. And I'm really happy to see. I'm really sad that Walter had to shut the City Tavern.
Yeah.
But really, really
Aw.
hopeful that he says he's going to keep going with season 12. So we wish him luck and, support him. But I'm
Yeah.
really excited to see what he'll do. Maybe he'll even be like bigger and grander now that he hasn't got the tavern. He can put like, I know he has lots of businesses. He can put a lot of energy into
Right.
everything else. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Well, that's good. That's good. He's able to keep going with something. Yeah, with things.
Yeah, his staff says he
But,
won't retire. They're like, he'll never retire. He'll
never
he'll never
He'll find
retire.
something to do.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Yeah, yeah. I like those kind of people.
I do too. That's what I want to do. I don't know about you, Tiffany, but I just do not. What is the term? I mean, it sounds sort of morbid these days because we're all very, we're all very aware of. Let's be honest, we're all kind of aware of like the fragility of life in this
Yeah.
pandemic. But like,
Yeah.
I just want to die in harness because I would not be happy if I'm just like sitting on, if I'm not doing something, I'm gonna be like, I'm just like. So people were sort of like, almost running around scared. I was like, I wasn't scared, but I was just like, well, at least you're gonna like live with purpose. Like, come on, live with purpose.
Yeah.
Nothing better to do that to you than being like, here, let's rip out everything from underneath you and see how you do.
Yeah.
So it's a good test of character.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I hope that's not too like. I'm a little sarcastic. I hope that's not too.
Oh, hey, absolutely. Hey, you can be sarcastic all you want here. Like I said, we're in a tavern.
Yes, absolutely. Huzzah!
Huzzah!
We're for real life here, keeping it real, guys. Right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I would say our 18th century
All
counterparts would understand. So yeah.
Of course. But yeah, so do you think you might do any like food demonstrations at like living history events?
Hopefully this year. Definitely at the Dills Tavern. I'm going to be back doing some things by the spring. We're going to try to have we in the works to do a market fair in like late August. We're going to invite a lot of people to come to Fort Fred. Hoping to get that event off the ground. But besides that, we've got lots of other ones. And then I always do a few independent things here and there. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I haven't really been this year. I don't know about you because it's hard. Like sites normally contact all of us to do different things. And we're all just sort of, we're all just like, is anything going to happen this year? Where are we going to go? So my schedule's kind of open. I've got a few things, but if I do anything this year, for sure, it'll be at the Dills Tavern and maybe a couple other sites down south. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cool. Yeah. And hopefully, like Frederick will take place this year, at least to some extent,
Yeah. I mean, so far they say it's going, but I mean, we all know it's kind of like you prepare and then, we hope for the best. Yeah. So you go up to Niagara a lot.
Yeah, because I know, because I usually, the first weekend of February, I go to that artisan show down in Lewisburg.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, kind of like it's kind of like a good little warm up to the reenactment season, but they're not having it until next year and everything. I guess it was too soon, plus with the mandates and everything. But like I was like, I kind of figured it would probably be like that, but but then like you see it and you're just like, oh man, because it's like, because I love driving up that way, and it's such a, I love the hotel that it takes place in. It's the Country Inn. It's the Best Western, but it doesn't really look like a Best Western, if you will. Like it just had this kind of like this old world, almost kind of like country cottage charm to it. Yeah. And it's just, I love going there, and but I don't know. I mean, maybe we can. I don't know. Maybe you can take a road trip or something like that. But
I know you should see. Just get a bunch of people together and just go and like hang out for the day. Because I know we've been to some of our.
Yeah, why not? I mean, there won't be any 18th century stuff there, but
you still have a slap up meal. I mean, that place is great. I love it. Very into I love anything like crafty country. It's just like so comforting. And I never did that show as a merchant, but a lot of my friends did, and I would go up and see them, and I always loved that. I know, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But yeah, so what would you say was your craziest experience that happened at a living history event?
I've had a couple, but I thought about this the other day when you kind of like, you were kind of like, think about this, right? So I was trying to think,
Yeah.
I was trying to think of the absolute craziest thing that's ever happened. And
Uh-huh.
I have one funny story. It wasn't exactly crazy, but it was just funny, and it's a funny memory. And,
Yeah.
but as far as like as a business owner, crazy, yeah.
Hmm.
So I had a lady come in the tent once, and she was like, your stuff is so expensive for having been produced in like a foreign country by small children and slave labor, that sort of thing. And
And you're like, excuse
I was
me?
like, whoa, okay. There's like on so many levels I didn't even know how to answer. I was just like, oh my goodness, ma'am, actually, I'm the one slaving in my basement, sadly, to make all of this. And, it's all been made like
Mhm.
ethically and this and that. So
Yeah.
yeah, and she was so she was like coming in for a fight, and it was just like I was totally taken aback. I mean, that just has to be the craze. I just didn't it's sort of slightly political too, which is what was hard about it, because I was just like, oh no, I care about no, I don't like exploit children. It's terrible. But yeah, it was probably like the
Yeah.
craziest because she was just looking for a fight. And then when I told her, she was just like, oh, I'm so sorry. But that was probably like the craziest thing that's ever happened as a business owner. And by the time she left, she
Yeah.
understood. And I was like, no, it's okay. Like we all care about ethics. Like good for you for like having some standards. Just don't yell at people, right? Like come in and be nice.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
I mean, you can ask questions.
yeah, yeah, I think that,
If you want to know, ask.
right,
Like, oh, who makes this stuff?
right.
Where do you get it from?
Yeah, where do you get it? It was
Yeah.
sort of attack from the start, but yeah, it's kind of like the craziest. Like I said, it's sort of like it was sort of like, it was painful, but it happened.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. The craziest thing I ever saw in an event is just sort of funny was at Mount Vernon at that event I was telling you about in '99.
Mhm.
Bunch of kids in camp in the evening got a bit crazy and were sort of beating each other up and fighting, and then they ended up breaking a bunch of glow sticks open and like covering each other with
Oh.
all the fluid from the glow sticks, which you couldn't see because it's clear. And then they were running around in the field and they were like glowing in the dark. It was, and so we were like all just standing watching these
Were they
like,
wearing period clothes while doing it?
yeah, they were like, it was
Hilarious.
all the young kids from the infantry, right? It's a crazy story, but it's hilarious. So just imagine like a bunch of like hormone crazed, like free for all, like 15 to 19-year-old boys, like 6 or 7 of them, who
Yeah.
were just like, I mean, they just had too much something going on. They were like fighting each other. And
Yeah.
then so like and you couldn't see it on they were in like their small clothes, and then they just start like running around doing cartwheels and chasing each other and tumbling and everything, and the rest of us are like standing here with like a drink like this is interesting, like, and we start at one point someone
Oh,
goes and grabs like a
man.
camera because none of us had camera phones then,
Uh-huh.
and snapping pictures, and all you see when the pictures were developed were these flashes of like neon, because that's all we could see was like the neon on their clothing. It was
Just all the neon
it was
from the glow stick.
just funny, random, but and then I mean, at one point I remember one of the natives came in and like grabbed a woman out of my tent. I think it was planned, but I never found out. And like he literally came in and was like,
Oh.
he was just like, did a call and picked her up and carried her out. And Barry just kind of looks at me and goes, "Did you know that was going to happen?" I'm like, "No. Can I help you?" You know.
It's like, yeah, hey.
Yeah, it was fun. So, I tell people living history is always fun, right? I mean, what's the craziest thing you've seen? What's
Yeah.
the craziest thing you've seen in an event, like whether it was like scripted or not? Because I mean, we've all had.
Oh gosh. I mean, like I haven't been doing it for as long as you have. But I know because when you said somebody, like your whole like confrontational part, that part, I mean, we have had, well, I'll get back to that, but at actual living history events, I mean, we've had people just ask some of the most bizarre questions.
We all get that.
And yeah, and a friend of mine, he has a name for these people, or actually, it's not really. I don't think it's his invention. I think it's like kind of a universal like term for people that just ask like
Inane
just things
questions.
like,
Yeah.
is that a real fire?
Oh my gosh, yes. So yes, when you're interpreting, whenever I cook, that is exactly, is that a real fish? Is that a real fire? Are you warm? Is that cold? Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. It's always yes. The
Yeah.
answer's always yes, right? You're right.
Is that a real fire? Or I think like we were eating, we were eating with like just like these little pita chips with like it was some type of hummus dip or something,
Right.
and somebody came up and like she was all like, "Oh, I bet you didn't." I love when they try to call you
Oh
out.
yeah, no, it's
And
hilarious.
they really don't have any clue, but like there she goes like, "Oh, I bet you they didn't have chips and dip back then," and we're just kind of sitting there like, "I bet you they did." You know?
Just a little different, but we are modern people.
Yeah, but still the same idea.
No, that's true. Like we should all get together, whether you're a merchant or a living historian or a reenactor, all the different things, and write a book about some of the funniest and silliest things people have ever said to us. Because yeah, it's often like that. It's like, is that real food? Are you hot?
Yeah.
What is? And it's never like what. It's like I think it's
My
just.
favorite is my favorite is the "you must be hot in that," and it's just like, well, probably no more hot than you are.
Yeah, it's usually what I
know?
say. I never mind those questions. In fact, I think it's a wonderful moment for my theory is that most people just aren't trained how to ask politely, or if they have a question, they're afraid of being rude. Hey everybody, they're afraid of being rude, so it comes out as just being sort of like silly. Because you don't want to, you don't want to be. They're not generally trying to be unkind, but you're right. People will be like, I do remember lots of instances like, well, they didn't really have this. And, I mean, if you wanted to be snarky back, you say, well, I don't go ripping out every filling in my mouth before I come to an event either. I'm a modern person living in this modern world and I'm doing my best. But yeah, I mean, I kind of have to eat food, and maybe I'm not going to cook an entirely pureed meal just on the side of while interpreting. But it is funny. People do often, they do say funny things. I bet people ask you if you're singing. Is that your real voice? Is your real voice that good?
I have. I've gotten like a couple people say things like along those lines and everything, and I'm just like, yeah, it's my real voice. I mean,
no,
do you hear it coming directly out of me?
There's a small person inside of me who's singing for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, like I love people, I really do, but like I grew up on like Blackadder. I'm like Rowan Atkinson waiting to get out. I'll just be like I'll just be like sarcastic, but not meaning to be intentionally like a jerk. But I'll just be like, oh no, I'm a ventriloquist. Actually, that person.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, and that's one thing that you have to remember. I guess like that's something that we should all remember too. Yeah. It's like, these are people coming in not really familiar with history.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, most of the population is not.
I know. I'm shocked all the time. I really am. I'm shocked all the time. You even mentioned to the average adult about World War II or this or that, and sometimes it's like you think it's like I often just mistakenly think it's a common reference point, and then I get people looking at me like it's gone really quiet. Yeah, like what? What are you talking about? I just forget I was raised. I'm actually. My mother had me very late. Her mother had her kind of late. And I was raised by the generation that went through that were born between 1902 and 1916. And they all went through the Depression and World War II. That was my grandparents and aunts and uncles, great aunts and uncles. So, I mean, I was like around them constantly. And I just kind of forget that, they all went through literally the war, both sides of the Atlantic. And I'm just sort of like, I've been very affected by that. But I kind of know a lot about it and very grateful for the things I have because of their sacrifice. And then I forget some people don't even realize that happened. And I'm like, oh my goodness, okay, well, it's not like a judgment moment. It's more just like an educational / awakening. But yeah, most people really don't have, most people that are interested in history will find a way to, come to an event and experience it. That's why I like living history. That's why it's such a teaching opportunity. Yeah. So if they're interested, they'll come and they'll see.
Right, and the thing is they're there, so there's at least some level of interest. It's just sometimes, because we know the answers, because we're familiar with the history. I don't know, it kind of when they say things like that, I mean, it's easy for us to just be like,
it just throws us, we don't want to,
Do you realize how silly that sounds?
Right.
But but that just may be their way of trying to really kind of word their question, because they may not even really know how to word their question,
It's true. It's like an ice. It's kind of like a cocktail party, right? It's envisioning a really awkward cocktail
Right.
party where someone walks up and goes, "So what do you do for a living?" And the answer is always like, then you go, "Oh, how do I describe this without sounding like imposter syndrome and
Right.
immature?" But it's true. Like people don't
Yeah.
know how to maybe phrase it, and maybe they're just nervously asking questions or nervously talking.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I always remember that. But I mean, inside, of course, we're going, "Oh, you poor thing. Like yeah, I'm glad you're here because here's the information."
Yeah.
And, history
Right.
is good to learn because you learn so much from it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's true. Most people don't really, they're drawn to
Yeah.
something and they don't know why, but they don't always know how to like ask questions. So that's our job as like living historians, is to make it approachable for them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that is something that's really important, is making it something that's approachable. And of course, there's people that do get inappropriate. I did an interview with a lot her well she got married, so her last name's different, but it's Eliza Vince.
Oh
She has a blog called Silk and Sass 1776, and I interviewed her for my webzine, and and she kind of talked about like some people, like who come to her, like the events that she does. She and her husband, they're performers and
yeah.
everything.
I've seen
And
it. I know her, and then she sings. I know she's really enjoys singing, and sometimes she'll deal with,
yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but she but she got into how some people who are really really nice, maybe they just don't know any better, and then others that get really inappropriate, like 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 how like some women seem to think that, oh, because we're women, like, oh, it's okay for me to ask if your boobs are real or something like that,
Yeah.
even though, yeah, you're wearing, I mean, of course you're wearing like corsets and, all that stuff. So that's, it's going to enhance, everything a little bit more. But, but like, I mean, like, even like including like women just kind of getting like really like, are these real?
Yeah.
And she's like, It's like, would you like me coming up to you and doing that? I mean,
Well, there is a lot of touching that goes on sometimes, maybe not so much in the last few years, but like, 10
Yeah.
years ago, even 10, 15 years ago, I remember people would just walk up to me and just be like, or like pick or sort of like, just
Right.
want to touch. Now, I think
Mm-hmm.
because, well, for lots of reasons, which are good, people generally walk up and say,
Yeah.
and like, oh, yeah, no, go ahead, I'm pretty open. I was in theater, I've been through fashion design, like, there ain't nothing I haven't seen, so whatever, poke away.
Yeah. I
But,
mean, I'm familiar
right?
with all that, changing on the side of the
Duct
stage and
tape
then going
bras.
back
Yeah,
out.
duct tape bras,
Yeah,
because you just can't have anything else and you're changing in front of guys and whatever.
exactly.
You lose that modesty really fast. It's not worth it, whatever. But yeah, but
Absolutely.
on the other hand, because I think that many of the venues we go to, we're dressed, we look kind of like a spectacle to people. And so in that sense, they
Yeah.
kind of feel like we're an object, a tactile thing rather than a person. And so, yeah, they sometimes lose their sense of like, maybe, not everyone, most people kind of stand back in awe, even if it's just like the
Right.
most basic dress. People will, like your dresses, some of your dresses
Yeah.
are beautiful. People probably walk up and go like, how did the sleeve ruffles fall? And how do you not get that in your food?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean like they should come up and like attack you. But people, yeah, women can be sometimes pretty blunt
Yeah.
and interesting. So, but we've all had those encounters. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and it's funny because it's like, at least in my experience, it's like the men have been more respectful, whereas the women are like,
Yeah.
At least that's been my experience. Maybe somebody else has a different experience, but getting back to the confrontational part of, so when I was, giving a tour at the Living History Museum that I'm the events manager at, of course, I incorporate, since clothing and music and cosmetics are like my, big, thing that I do and everything. That's like part of my shtick. I, I tend to get into clothing a lot, particularly women's clothing, and I've been getting into the men's clothing more because I'm also getting into doing artillery and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff with my unit. But but I would often talk about women's clothing, just because it's what I have the most knowledge of, and and of course, that's why I love this shirt, Keep Calm and Wear Your Stays, because I am on a mission to just debunk all of the little, just, I guess you can call them misunderstandings and myths around corsets.
Don't get me started,
everything.
Tiffany. Yeah, I mean, the one thing I hear constantly on that subject, people walk in the tent, and not people that are knowledgeable even just a little bit, but just the
Yeah,
average person. And again, I'm not like mad at
right.
them. They come in, corsets, oh la la la, and they cut the ribs out, and you couldn't breathe, and this harmed your
Right.
baby, and this caused war, Second World War. I mean, like, it's the stuff that comes out of people's mouths
Yeah.
is hilarious. But like in general, I always try to tell them the same thing. I feel like I'm on a major mission when I'm set up to be like, actually, what you have in mind is something later, and even that, it was sort of, there's lots of reasons.
Right.
Lots of reasons why it got though. Do you have 5 minutes? Do you have 5 minutes? Can I sort of tell you? Because I know it's such a, it's becoming less faded in mystery. But I mean, people, they
Right.
absolutely, like, hey, I'm a modern woman. Don't get me wrong. I know you are too. I, I won't get into politics, but like, as far as like being like, standing up and being like, I'm not going to put up with injustice as far as women are concerned. But it's like, no, that's not what these garments were. It's not. Everyone has a really,
Yeah.
stays and corsets get a really bad rap. And I know we all, if you're in costume, you sort
Exactly.
of feel like you're constantly telling people about that.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so I do tend to go through a lot of the myths and stuff of the corsets and the stays, and then give the actual truth of it, okay? And I had this one woman, I don't know if she was reliving her glory days in like the 60s or 70s or something like that, but every single time I would say, like, I would like, but like, so like I would like because I kind of knew she was gonna be like that because I went into about how like the head like when I was in the kitchen, we were in the kitchen part of the tour. I was getting into, okay, like the head cook would not get, even though the head cook was responsible for a lot of, for pretty much everything that went on in the kitchen. If a dinner party went well, the head cook would not get the credit, basically.
Mm-hmm.
At least in that part of at least in that particular house. And I tell people, okay, who do you think would get the credit if not the head cook? And this woman, she goes like, probably some guy. And I'm like, all right, this is gonna be fun. And I go, no, actually, the lady of the house would get credit
Yeah.
because, and in a way, I mean, in a way, I could understand it because she was the one that had to give the directions to the head cook, and then, but I was like, actually, no, the lady of the house would get, and she'd be like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, yeah. I mean, women did do. I mean, women were involved in, society and communities a lot more than people tend to
Oh
think.
yeah,
I
the
mean,
management of
women.
households, management of
Women
everything.
ran the household. They ran. I mean, there were single and widowed women that ran
Yep.
businesses, and even the women that
Yes.
were married. Like if you were married to a blacksmith, I mean, if you were a woman married to a blacksmith, you also had to know the business
Absolutely.
because,
Yeah. They
yeah,
know,
and
they were in there with them. They taught them how to make nails and different things that were, I mean, not that nails aren't,
yeah.
aren't, I
Hi,
mean,
Todd. Yeah,
yeah.
but that's the thing too, and that's what also people are really surprised when they, when I tell them, when I tell them that, they're like, really, because a lot of people assume that the like if the husband passed away, the business would be,
Oh yeah.
left to
Would be left to the
like the oldest
son.
son. It's like, well, what if the oldest son was 5?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to leave it to a 5? No, you would leave it to the second in command, basically, who knew the business, who knew it inside and
Yep.
out. And that was 9 times out of 10 the wife,
So, quick side note, at the Dill's Tavern. So the
Yeah.
Dills, which Dillsburg is of course named after, the Dills came
Hmm.
to that area of Dillsburg, that area, York County, in the, oh goodness, the
Yeah.
very early 18th century. But basically, by the end of the century, when the tavern and the distillery itself are thriving, they had it was, I think, I'm gonna forget the date, but it doesn't matter. It's late 18th century. The head of the
Hmm.
family died. suddenly, like people do. And the wife was around my age, about 39 years old. And guess what? She ran the business for like the next 20 years. And, you know, it's like, and so, and it was a tavern and massive distillery. And our distillery at the Dills Tavern was actually rivaling George Washington's distillery down in Mount Vernon. Like it was a large distillery, which is why this site that I'm with is so amazing. But like, just when you said that, it was like, gave me goosebumps. I'm like, yeah, we talk about that all the time. We interpret that. And people are genuinely shocked. They just think like, but that's a woman. And we're like, so women have been running businesses since the Roman times. Like it's, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because we always presume that an earlier time period is not as progressive or equal. But no, women really, they managed so much in the past. I almost feel like today we're not even, for us modern women, we're like, oh, we do this and we run a house and we have a kid and we do this. But I still feel like we're almost not as capable sometimes. And it sounds terrible, but I still feel like I'm really, I feel like I look at this woman that ran the Eichelberger Tavern, or women take over their husbands' businesses, that we know there's documentation of it. And I just think, wow, that really must have been hard. Must have been really, really hard. But yeah, people aren't aware of that. They aren't.
No, and it really, because I was reading even an article from Colonial Williamsburg, and it was an interview with one of the women there, and she portrays Clementina Rind.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm saying that correctly, but she was one of the first women. Plus, she did run one of the first printing presses in America, and she opened it. Part of the reason why she opened it was because her husband was a minister, and she was, printing up like the pamphlets and all that stuff for them.
Right.
But they also like kind of expanded and had to, print other things too. But like, but she was even. But they were even talking about how even in Colonial Williamsburg, like when you have like the women who are the tinsmiths and the blacksmiths and the silversmiths and running the printing press, one of them actually relayed a story of one time. I think it was one of the female tinsmiths in Colonial Williamsburg, and she was talking about how, when she was in there working, doing her thing, and she had 3 women come into the shop, look around, look right past her doing her thing at the forge, and they're just like, oh, I guess the tinsmith or blacksmith or whatever, I guess they're not in today. And she's just like, actually, that's me,
Yeah.
Like, and
I'm beginning to think there was a problem with 20th century education. I don't know. Is it just me? Maybe it was our generation, like, got totally, I don't know. But I know it's very common. They think it's, maybe they think it's entirely gender specific, which it never was. So I'm not sure why that preconception, anyone who studied 18th or 19th century history knows that even though sometimes even we in living history think, oh, it must have been done by a man. No, there's lots of, it's funny. It's funny yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's even drawings of women working in printing presses and, just doing all kinds of things. And even like, even if you were like a housewife back then, so to speak, it wasn't anything to sneeze at, really. I mean, we look at,
massive work
housewives today, like my grandma was a 50s housewife and everything. But like, but even that, like when you compare it to what women of the 18th century had to do and everything and go through and all that. But it's just like
mountains of work that never stopped.
It's almost like, wow, like what are we complaining about?
Oh, I know. It's like, so even on my busiest day, so this week was great. Let's just talk some 20th century, like domesticity, right? So every piece of equipment that we all own is like highly digitized now, even if your stuff's not brand new. So my washing machine's like busted. It's like in pieces over here. I got a refrigerator because you can't get somebody out to fix anything these days. I feel like today we have all these modern problems where like we're constantly trying to fix equipment and manage like stuff and things, whereas 18th century women had it was just much more organic. So maybe the
Yeah.
workload was more manual, but I actually really like 18th century living compared to modern life. And I mean that because
Yeah.
I've spent lots of time, as I'm sure you have too, like in really heavy duty living history environments or camping, like full on living history, like immersive experiences.
Oh yeah.
And like on my worst day in the 18th century, like doing tons of work, I get done and I feel wonderful. I feel exhilarated. Like it's a ton of
Yeah.
physical work, but I'm not as annoyed as I am with tech. Maybe I just have a technology issue, but like at home, I feel like I'm constantly like, this thing's broken, that thing's broken, the washing machine doesn't work.
Right.
I have to buy another fridge. And I just look at my husband, I'm just like, I know it wasn't easier in the past, but somehow I'm more at peace with the work in a more manual
Yeah.
time period. So, but even for our worst days in modern life, the worst thing we have to do is fight with some technology, chuck some stuff in a machine, chuck it over here, empty
Mhm.
this, go over there. We're not physically as tired. I feel like we're more emotionally
Right.
tired right now than we are physically tired. And maybe that's worse. I don't know. I have more anxiety
Yeah.
now than I think I would have had in the 18th century. I don't want to know anything anymore. I want to like know what I learn. I want to know what I read, but I don't
Right.
want to know about anything else. So I don't know. Maybe that's why we do this like historical escapism in a way. Like we feel like, I don't feel like when we go back in time or interpret back in time that it's easier or better. I
Right.
just feel like there's something about where my mind goes and it becomes a little less anxiety prone because I'm more in
Mhm.
like the moment of living than I am like fighting with something like modern technology. But that's I don't know, that's just my take on it. But yeah, like
Right.
every
Yeah.
generation thinks that they have it like either the best or the worst. I think depending on how you look at it.
Oh
So
yeah. Mhm.
I don't know. But would you rather
Mhm.
be a 50s housewife or a modern or like a modern woman like we are now? Like that's the loaded question, right? Because everyone goes, it's like,
Yeah, it is a loaded question because yeah, Todd says, yeah, but you could die from a paper cut or something.
oh yeah, I like that. Oh hey Sarah, by the way,
Yeah,
hey. Yeah, no, you could die
I
from a
love it.
paper
Yeah, I
cut.
love
But
it.
I think actually we would have had more resistance to the diseases in the paper cut then we actually do now because we're always like
Possibly.
I think my liver is going to explode from too much Purell. Like I think my liver will just shut down soon because I'm like Purell, right? In another
Yeah.
year.
I
Um,
think a lot of Purell's on back order too with all the stuff going on.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it depends like, you know, on the person and, your own level of immunity and everything.
Hmm. I
But
wonder, I'm sure there are people in the 18th century because I know I've want to make more of a study of this, but I don't know, but when you read diaries and you read accounts of people, the one thing that's just the same throughout history, especially in like women's accounts, I love reading like Martha Ballard, the midwife from the 18th century, from 1780s, and
yeah,
Martha just writes things that are so relatable. Like she writes this hilarious little line about how her one son is like constantly drunk. I'm not bashing men, by the way, guys. I'm not bashing men, but this is like really important, right? So she
right.
writes something that like every mother and wife would have probably written for all of millennia, right?
Yeah,
She can't understand why her son won't grow up, why he
right.
potentially acts like a child at a time. It's like, well, she's got the same problems as anybody else. She's got like a person in her family who's struggling with an addiction, and he just doesn't seem to be able to find his way. And I'm like, that's so relatable. Like, who couldn't say that? So, but it was a bit like, it was like, oh, I wish men would just stop being boys. And I'm going, okay, sounds familiar. But I mean, everything she wrote reminded me that like her life was just the same as my life. The only difference is the technology and the clothes and
Right.
maybe the, environment, but everything else is pretty much the
Yeah.
same. So
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's what and I think that, when I do living history, or even when I do something like, you know, write like historical fiction or anything like that, or one thing that I do, or even a song that's inspired by historical events. One thing that I do try to convey is that like these were people,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you probably have and like you, like when I read journals and firsthand accounts and everything, you know, I'm just really surprised at how, I mean, I don't know if surprised, maybe when I first started studying these things, but now I'm just kind of like, wow, like these people are more relatable than I would, me as like a 21st century person would think,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just more like, and then Todd says, I think every generation has had and will have its own set of challenges. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so true.
And, and that's the thing too. And that's another thing, like we try to convey. It's like, they had challenges, we had challenges, but there might have been, just some differences in that challenge, depending on, what was going on politically at that time,
right.
or, what was going on, even like if there was like a disease running around, or if there, but it's just kind of like, it's really, I love to humanize it, and I love to just kind of convey that to people that, look, these people are actually not that unrelatable. And I think that's another thing, too, that kind of turns people away from history as well.
Oh, yeah.
Is that they think, oh, it's just a bunch of old white dudes in these dusty robes and these powdered wigs and everything. And it's just like no, it's so much more than that.
It is.
It's so much more.
But that's why we do this. We're on a mission, whether we cook or sing or make clothing or interpret at museums. We are on a mission to, it's like we're like ambassadors of humanity, okay? Because we're just like, look, you think you got problems. Yeah, you got problems, but these people had problems too. And look, you can learn from their mistakes, their political decisions, their environmental impact. I mean, oh my gosh, the list is like legion. That's why I think, like, when people say I don't like history, I'm just like, oh my gosh, you have to like history. Like, there's so much to learn. And like, oh yeah, it's like, oh, my brain's exploding, right? I mean, you guys feel the same way, right? If I'm watching, but I think part of why we love doing this is, I know, right? It's like, so I know, because we all feel the same way. Right now, we're just like, there's so much that every generation feels like they have the answers, right? I always feel like I'm like, oh, I should know how to do this, blah, 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 blah. And then I suddenly realize, like, no, I don't know how to do everything all the time. I need to look back and remember the people that taught me and the generations that came before. But part of why we love showing people history is saying, okay, this is a great aspect of this decade, but it's just a little window. It's just a little window. So it's like encouraging them to go and really look at the true history behind it. But it's true. There's so much more to history than just this little image we've got. Especially too, like I said earlier, people just think it's, 18th century too. A lot of people now, especially, will say like, well, that's not that interesting. It's like I'm like, no, it's a very volatile, revolutionary, there's so much more to every time period. And that's why we're just like masochistic ambassadors. Like, we want to like do the hard stuff to show people like, this is where you came from. This is like the stuff that came before you, and you can learn from it. So I don't know. I love it. That's how I feel about it. But I think we all experience a good bit of that, like wanting people to get the bug. So.
Absolutely. And Todd says Google has all the answers.
Sure.
Yes, it does.
Kind of scary that Google has all the answers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't even use Siri on my phone anymore. I don't know about any of you guys, because I've gotten to the point where I felt like I was actually asking too many basic questions, getting too lazy, and I was like, nope, I'm shutting it off. If I need something, I'll type it. Or I kind of had to make I felt like for me, it was like I had to cut off a certain level. So I don't want to look at Google or Wikipedia. I go for like, the hardcore books or something. Don't look at these books. These are actually fake books. Look.
Hey, I'm gonna be getting the whole Tavern motif going here. So I'm on the hunt for a backdrop.
Yay! I was trying to think of a Tavern-y style. This is like it's actually a really cool like Harry Potter one. I thought you all would enjoy it. And put some little candles on. But yeah, it's But my other wall over there, we should just film each other in front of our book, because all of us. One thing I think a lot of us share, we all have a lot of books.
Yeah.
A lot of books. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and then Todd also says, all kidding aside, we have instant access to the sum of human knowledge, and too few people make use of it. This is very true. We actually kind of discussed that earlier in the live stream too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, more information at our fingertips and less knowledge. Now, here's what gets me, and I don't mean to like sound like scary, but like more information than ever, less skills than ever. Okay, so if anybody wants to I'm not even that worried about like the environment. I'm more worried about like, will somebody in 5 or 10 years know how to cook? I'm more bothered about things like growing food and cooking, because I know that's the thing that scares me. I'm like, I know our environment is what gives us our food, but on the other hand, like, does anyone know how to like cook anymore? So we need to like learn more skills, keep doing skills, and that's what living history provides, like a window into like physical, actual skills that is so different from modern life. That's why I like it.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, that was, wow, I think we went a little bit over an hour there.
I think we did too. I'm actually.
And my phone battery just gave me the 5% warning and
okay.
everything. So.
Well, plus Instagram didn't kick us off yet. Well, thank you for having. It's been great. I hope you all enjoyed hearing us ramble about how to fix the world and living history and everything else.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. And I will be, for those that came in late or just coming in now and like missed it, I will be uploading it to my other platforms as well, because IG Live now allows you to do that. So yay! And I'll try to take out all the mess of us trying to figure out the whole IG Live.
Sorry about that.
Split screen thing on in the beginning. Thanks for thank you, Todd. Glad you enjoyed it. Glad everybody enjoyed it. So
thanks for having me, Tiffany.
Thank you so much for coming on here and being like my first guest.
Oh, anytime, hon. And I want to have you on mine because, like, quick note, I'm going to be doing. I'm doing like I have a vintage clothing collection. I'm going to be like doing show and tell and stuff. So I'd love to have you on sometime, and you could just like.
I'd love to.
Just interact.
Definitely.
It'd be fun. So I'll keep you posted.
Yes. Thanks, Todd. Miss you too. All right. Well, thank you, April, so much. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And one more. Cheers.
Cheers. Huzzah.
Grab your drinks.
Take care, everybody.
All right. All right. Thanks so much.
You all take care.
All right. Thanks, you too.
Bye, Tiff.
Bye. See ya.